Okay, so I am back with my recap of Black Narcissus episode 2. So obviously it picks up where the previous episode left off, except at this point they've moved the injured man inside and they are still working. They're praying. Some of the sisters are praying while some are actively working to get him stitched up to stop the bleeding and the whole thing. And so Sister Clodagh is still working to try to get him stabilized, get the blood and all that stuff under control. You still have Mr. Dean is saying, I told you to stay out of it. You don't want to get involved. The women in the village can help him. I think it'd be better off for you to just stay out of it. And she basically told him that she's not interested in what he has to say. And so basically he was like, okay, you know what? You're on your own. Like, I'm trying to help you, but you want to do things your way. Her whole attitude is, we are covered in the blood of Jesus. I'm not a very religious person, so, I would kind of err on the side of caution, but her whole thing is they're covered, by the blood of Jesus. He's going to watch over them. He's going to protect them. So whatever the fallout is going to be in the event that this goes south, they'll be covered. And so he is more realistic and, dealing with the realities of where they are and the mindset of the individuals around. And he's like really trying to tell her, like, don't get involved. But she's, they prayed and, while some of the sisters were praying, namely, who was I know it was Sister Ruth, maybe Sister Blanche, and Sister Philippa was standing against the wall. Sister Clodagh and I think Sister Bryony was actually working on him along with some of the other guys that were helping in the garden. And as she was, trying to stitch him up, get him together, as Sister Clodagh, she could look over and she saw Sister Ruth. Now you can see Sister Ruth she looks pale, she looks sickly, she looks like she's about to collapse. So eventually, Sister Clodagh asked him to take her into the chapel so that she can kind of catch her breath to, try to help her out. And so they took her into the chapel, and when they got into the chapel, she had a flash of when Srimati in the beginning where she pulled the shutters open, I guess, before she, stepped out to run to the roof. And so eventually they got him stitched up. They even lit a cigarette for him, and he seemed like he was doing pretty good. And Sister Clodagh thanked Sister Bryony. She was like, it's not my best stitch work, but it got the job done. So now that crisis has been averted, she knows now that she has to deal with the other sisters, namely Sister Ruth. And so you kind of see her how she's preparing herself. So she's about to go into the chapel, and Sister Philippa and Sister Blanche are walking out with Sister Ruth, and she's saying that that everything seemed like everything's going to be fine, and we could all kind of relax. And then she goes over to, I guess, to comfort Sister Ruth. And Sister Ruth pushed her away and basically like, don't touch me. You don't get to touch me. I mean, you slapped the crap out of her, right? And so she walked off. And so now Sister Clodagh is just kind of sitting there like, oh, okay. I think she went too far. The next day, the supplies and the post arrived. And of course they're all excited. And there's a letter from Dorothea. So apparently Sister Clodagh had written to Reverend Mother or Mother Superior. I think I called her like 3 different things in the last video. Mother Superior Dorothea, letting her know obviously about the progress, but also about how Sister Ruth was struggling. And they basically said that Father Roberts would be there during this specific time, and then once he arrives, he will take a look. He will decide whether or not Sister Ruth should come back with them. Try to determine how, if he could probably alleviate some of her suffering or whatever the case may be. If not, then she'll just go back with him when they go back to Darjeeling. So the sisters are in town, and you can see Ruth. She got her face and her mouth covered, and you can tell she's not okay. She's not okay with the situation. And so they're now talking to one of the women in the market who is selling these blankets. And, you know, Sister Bryony actually saw Mr. Dean. He was also in the room. She called out to him and he waved and he, you know, asked her how she was doing and the whole thing. And, basically, Sister Clodagh doesn't want to talk to Mr. Dean. But Sister Bryony is like, you know, basically, they had need all this stuff done, but Sister Clodagh doesn't want to ask. She really doesn't want to deal with Mr. Dean anymore. She doesn't want to ask him for help. And so eventually, Sister Ruth, I guess, went over to talk to him, and he asked her how she was doing, and they, you know, played you know, they kind of went back and forth a little bit with pleasantries and the whole thing. And then Sister Clodagh called Ruth over, and she needed her to speak with the woman who was selling the blankets to try to, I guess, to negotiate the price. And they needed, she wanted to purchase 8 blankets. And Sister Ruth was like, there's only 5 of us. Why do you need 8 blankets? And she was like, Joseph needs a blanket, Kanchi needs a blanket, and Anga needs a blanket. And so I guess she didn't even think about them. Like, okay, there are other people in here besides us that we want to try to make them as comfortable as possible as well. But, okay. So, back at the convent, Ruth and Anga is cleaning the bathhouse. And there was this room that Ruth saw. I guess that she could see had a lock on the outside. And Anga said that there were times when they had to lock Srimati up because she would have these fits. She would get sick. And, you know, they felt like it was just safer to have her to kind of isolate her. And you can see Ruth's face, you know, she, you know, kind of scary. And like I said, don't worry, Srimati is not going to hurt you. She's just, you know, looking for, I guess, love and attention. And she said, wait a minute, the last time you said that she wanted milk. And Anga just basically like I guess she's looking for some kind of comfort and attention. But, you know, she's not nothing for you to be afraid of. And so as Ruth left and she saw the door closed, it looks like a sale or something. She could see there was a flash of, I guess that was Srimati kind of pulling on the bars, wanting to be let out. And of course that freaked Sister Ruth out, and she ran away as fast as her legs could take her. Back in Claudia's office, so she was once again having reminiscence, and she was again with, you know, carefree. She was having a little cigarette and, you know, just living life. And Kanchi kind of walked in to bring some wood and dropped something, which kind of startled Clodagh. Oh, actually, which startled Clodagh. And she got up and she walked over to see what she dropped, and it was a magazine. And Kanchi was saying that Angu gave her the magazine to help her with her English. And so Dilip, I think I keep saying Dilipa. Dilipa arrived, and he wanted to talk to the sister. And so he wanted to talk to her because he wanted to attend their school. But Sister Clodagh was like, that's, you know, it's inappropriate. We don't have adult male pupils, and it's not something that we would do. And, you know, Dilip said that while the general would prefer that he attend, you know, a more, I guess, prestigious school, he was quite okay with him attending that school, and he actually had a letter from the general. And so Clodagh decided she didn't give him an answer right away. She simply said that she would take it under consideration. So later that night, you know, the ladies are in the bathhouse, and you can kind of see that Sister Philippa is deep in thought. You can see that something is working on her. And so Sister Clodagh arrives, and she kind of sat to the side with Sister Bryony. And basically, Sister Bryony was in agreement with her, like, it's inappropriate to have him here. And she also talked to her about Mr. Dean. She was like, you know, I understand that you don't, you know, really care for him, but at the end of the day, we have a lot of work that we need to get done, and we need him, and we need his help. And she agreed. She agreed that, you know, they do need him, and that she needs to do what she can to kind of rectify that situation. She also thought that it would be a good idea to have Mr. Dean talk to Dilip to kind of see his mindset, like where he is and why, he would want to be there instead of going to a different school. So the next day, Sister Clodagh, she actually walked down the hill to Mr. Dean's house. And so just as she was about to knock on the door was cracked, and she saw that he was in there with a woman. They, had their goings on, and, she was getting herself together. And she initially, so Sister Clodagh, kind of walked away, like she, was feeling some kind of way, and she almost ran away from the house. And then she turned around and she saw the woman leave, and then she went back to the house to talk to Mr. Dean. And so, of course, he was surprised to see her. She apologized for just showing up and said that, she should have sent a letter instead. And so he invited her in and they talked. And she asked him about Dilip, like what's he like, and what his situation is. And he basically said that while he is spoiled, there's no harm in him. And she was like, I just want to know about what his expectations are, as far as women. This is a place for women and young boys. And so he basically said that I don't think that you're going to have anything to worry about, especially when it comes to him, because basically the threat of displeasing his uncle is going to deter him from being inappropriate. So he's going to be like a choir boy, as much as he can be. But and then she apologized to him for being curt with him, and of course he accepted her apology, and he was like, well, you're just human. And you're only human. And she was like, yeah, I'm starting to realize that. So, it's nighttime, and Sister Clodagh arrives home, and that was pretty much it for that. So she's writing the next day. She's writing a letter to Mother Superior Dorothea, and of course, it's the voiceover, and you can see her shaving her head because they keep the hair real short. I can imagine that all that material would be quite warm, but she keeps her head shaved, so she's shaving her head, and she's writing about how well Dilip is doing and how it seemed like Ruth's health is improving, and Mr. Dean has commenced to work, and so there's still basically progress is being made. So Clodagh went outside, and just before she got out there, you saw Dilip, and you saw Ruth pass by him, and he spoke, he's speaking to him in French, basically in bonjour. She responded. Sister Clodagh came out, and you can see she's kind of coming down with something too, because at this point it's winter, it's cold, it's all get out, it's windy, so they're adjusting to the weather. And so they talked for a few minutes in French. And she realized that the ground's frozen, so nothing is growing. And so she's now in the office with Sister Philippa. And basically, Sister Philippa, she's, disappointed. She's the one with the green thumb. One of the reasons for her coming was that she was so good with planting and, gardening the whole thing. And she was giving Sister Clodagh some recommendations, but Sister Clodagh was like, I don't want to ask the Mother Superior for that because I think it would be too extravagant. And Sister Philippa was like, when it comes to the glory of the Lord, I don't think anything could be too extravagant. And so she kind of walked out. So now they're in the class, and they have Joseph. He's standing up there, and I think he's teaching the kids numbers. And so while he's doing that, Sister Clodagh walked over, and Kanchi was trying to read, and she was kind of helping her sound out the words to read. And you kind of see Dilip, who's sitting on the other side of the curtain. He's kind of looking back, and you kind of tell that they have a thing for each other, Kanchi and Dilip. And so Sister Bryony came in and told her that Mr. Dean was there and he was in her office. So she went into the office, and he asked how Delete was he was like, is Delete behaving himself? And they talked a little bit, and he was like, as long as you're not trying to convert him. She said something about religion, and he was like, well, there's a difference between religion and spirituality, even though I know some people get those things confused. And so Sister Bronny came in and brought some coffee, and he noticed that Sister Clodagh wasn't drinking the coffee, and he's like, oh, well, we have to, this is our Friday is our fasting day, we have to fast until 3:00. And so they continue to talk. Eventually he says to her that, you look sick. And she was like, no, I'm just tired. She did. She looked like she was coming down with something. And she was saying how she was translating some text into English to help Kanchi, and she was having some, issues. And so he agreed to take out, he agreed to do it. And then he, what did he say? She was like, she asked him again, you really don't believe what we're doing here, what we're trying to do here. And he was like, why do you care what I think? And then she kind of got quiet. And then he said, but you are different. She was like, well, in what way? He was like, you seem to be a lot nicer. You seem to be a lot nicer. And so with that, he left. So that night, Sister Clodagh is having some issues. She's been having these, memories, fantasies about having these intimate moments. And so I don't think all that flagellation, I don't know what this, but she was praying and whipping herself, that whole thing. And so later that night, she was in her room asleep. And then you see Sister Ruth standing over her, just watching her for some odd reason. And then you see Sister Ruth walking down the hall, and the candle goes out. So the next morning, the sister, I guess they designate somebody to do the wake up call, which is why they walk down the hall and ring a bell and, to wake everyone up. Sister Clodagh saw Philippa sitting, I guess she was sitting in the chapel. She was sitting by herself. So Sister Philippa went in to talk to her and to let her know that, that she was right. And that while she was able to accommodate her with some of the flowers, they would have to use some alternatives, I guess, that some more cost-effective alternatives. And so she saw Sister Philippa was just sitting there with the stone face, and she was like, well, I thought that you would be happy. And Sister Philippa told her, I have written to Reverend Mother Dorothea, and I asked if I can go back to Darjeeling. And she said that, being here, she felt like she wasn't able to focus on the work at hand, or doing the work of the Lord, because she was so focused on, she was starting to be more focused on other things that, just this whole thing, this garden thing was just taking over, her mind, when she felt like she should have spent more time focusing on prayer and reflection and other things. And she felt like back in Darjeeling, where they already have this beautiful garden that she's cultivated. And it's just, it was a lot deeper than that, but basically she's feeling like she's kind of losing her purpose being there. And in the end, she did say that this place is a bit too much for all of us. And she kind of got up and left. You kind of see Sister Clodagh, she got tearful, because she doesn't want Sister Philippa to leave, but at the same time, it's like, what else can she do? So Kanchi is outside, and she's dusting the statues. And she was dusting one of the statues, the head fell off. And so Ruth came up behind her and, proceeded to chastise her and talk about how she should be whipped, or she's going to get whipped when, I guess, Sister Clodagh finds out. And Delete walks up and says that, it's not her fault. It's, the drastic weather, the changes in the weather, how it goes from cold. I mean, it's from freezing rain to cold, and, it's affecting the material that the statues are made of. So it's not her fault. And, she apologized, Kanchi apologized, and she left. And so, Sister Ruth was like, well, where did she get that scent from? And he was like, Dilip said, oh, it's not her, it's me. I get it from Paris or London. I forget where. He said, it's called Black Narcissus. He was like, do you like it? And she was like, no, I don't. She's just so nasty. And her face all twisted up. And he, said what he had to say, and he left. So she standing there holding the statue head. And so you see him, he's now there behind someone. This is Dilip and Kanchi, and he kissed Kanchi, and she runs away, and you kind of see him standing there. And I'm kind of like skeptical about Dilip's motives for being there. It's kind of weird. There's something else he did that I thought was kind of off-putting, which I'll get to. I'm like, why are you really there? And so Ruth ends up with this, having these flashes, and she ends up going up to the roof with the statue head. And just as she was about to throw the statue head over, Sister Clodagh appeared behind her and asked her what she was doing. And, she turned around and had the statue head in her hand, and she said, well, it was Kanchi, the head, she was cleaning, the head fell off. And, she did have a flash of when Srimati jumped. And, Ruth told her that, Father Roberts would be there and be there soon. And she has arranged for her to go back with Father Roberts so that she could see a doctor. And, because, they understand that she has not been, doing well. And she said, I wish that you could see how much we're trying to help you. And, after that conversation, they flashed to Philippa. She packed up her things, and you could see her leaving. So, Philippa is now gone. So later that night, they're in chapel, and I guess they're having their quiet time. They're contemplating. Sister Blanche is reading something. Sister Clodagh, they're just sitting in silence. But you can see her watching Sister Ruth. Like, she's trying to figure out, I guess she's trying to figure out how to reach her some way. So later on that night, Sister Brian is playing the piano. The others are cooking because they're all preparing for the celebration tomorrow, where Father Roberts is supposed to arrive. And they started talking. Angus started talking about Srimati, about how they used to have parties all the time. And Blanche was like, well, what happened? And Angus says that, well, the same thing that always happens. Srimati fell in love with the man who she thought loved her until the baby came, and then I guess he was nowhere to be found. And around that time, Delete came in bearing gifts. And initially, Sister Clodagh was like, well, we're not really supposed to accept gifts for ourselves. And I guess because of the nature of the gifts, they were quite modest. They weren't like these extravagant gifts. They were, quite... it mean nothing to write home about, just like small tokens. She agreed, that they will just be seen as a donation to the convent. So of course they were happy, and I'm not exactly sure what Sister Ruth got, a necklace, a bracelet, or something. But Sister Clodagh walked over to help her, like, oh, it goes like this, and she kind of snatched away and gave her this nasty look, and walked out. It's like, okay. And Sister Bryony basically like, you know what, just let her go. We're not going to let this ruin the night. And Sister Bryony's face is like, I'm just so sick of her and this attitude of hers. They don't get, they don't understand what's going on with her. It's just coming across as somebody with just a stank, nasty, rank attitude. And they're just sick of it at this point. Later that night, they're in the chapel. And they're singing, Sister Bryony's playing the piano, they're singing. You have Joseph Anthony standing there with his little self. Sister Ruth, everybody's singing but her. She gets like, she's still sitting there with this scowl on her face. And they're singing. Eventually, Joseph Anthony, he was tired, so poor little thing just curled up on the little bench and he fell and he went to sleep. And Dilip and Mr. Dean arrived. And don't you know, Sister Ruth's whole demeanor changed. She was all smiles and she's glancing back at him and she starts singing now. She wasn't singing, she was singing, honey. Her whole attitude changed. And so you would think that he's coming in the middle of this thing, right? He would be a lot more subdued. Nope, he's singing and he's, he had kicked some bucket over there that made all this noise. And then, of course he eventually joined in, and Sister Ruth looked back at him and made eye contact, and he, kind of nodded saying hi. And then Sister Clodagh looked back at him. And, after that, they left the chapel, they went outside, and they thanked him for coming. And Sister Bryony asked him if he could take, because at this point, Joseph Anthony curled up and fell asleep. So she wanted to know if Mr. Dean would take Joseph from the chapel and take him into the convent so he could go to bed, because she felt that if he stayed out there, he'd probably freeze to death. And he agreed. And this is another thing that Dilip did that I thought was kind of off-putting. He went over and he grabbed Sister Claudia's hand and was like, well, I wanted to, what did he say? I forget what he said. He didn't say Mary, something to your Jesus, or bless your Jesus, something. He said something to the effect, but he grabbed her hand. And the reason I think felt that was kind of off-putting, as in the first episode, when he reached out to shake her hand, she was very concise and vocal when she told him they are not allowed to touch men. She told him that. So the fact that he just lurched out and grabbed her hand and shook her hand and was like, oh, I want to say, I was like, what is going on with you? Why are you really there? Why are you really there with them women's? Why are you there? Delete. What's up? And so, he went in to get Joseph Anthony, and, Sister Ruth was there, and she told him that she had a gift, and it was, oh, excuse me. I'm not sure where that came from, but it was some kind of I don't know what it was that she put into his hat. But the way she did it, it was almost like she was kind of trying to be romantic with the man. It's like, he's like, oh, well, thank you. So he picked up Joseph Anthony and walked out. So at this point, Sister Clodagh, Sister Bryony, and Sister Blanche are standing outside. So Joseph, Mr. Dean came out, and with Joseph, and he was going to take him into the building, and then she saw Sister Ruth come out, and she kind of like had this facial expression like, wait a minute, what is going on? Why? She felt like it was inappropriate for them to be alone together. And so he walked on, and the other sisters eventually leave. Dilip eventually leaves. And I think Sister, I don't know if it fell off Joseph's head or if Sister Ruth dropped something, but Sister Clodagh saw it and she went and picked it up. So eventually Sister Clodagh saw Mr. Dean to come out, and she asked him a question about, so what happened with Ruth when the two of you were in there? And he said, you should probably ask Ruth. And then she starts going in on him like, I knew that there was something off about you, or something she was saying, some old craziness, right? And eventually this is when Dilip says his goodbyes. And, they had words. And then eventually Mr. Dean apologized, because he agreed that she realized that he was drunk, and so she got upset that he came there drunk and the whole thing, and eventually he apologized for everything. And he had pinned something to her, but he was really close to her face, right? Like almost like he was trying to kiss her. And then he was like, Sister Clodagh is not your real name, is it? That's the name they gave you. And you can kind of see that she was kind of getting a little flustered. She was like, Sister Clodagh is my real name. She figured the name they gave her, that's now her real name. And he almost went in to kiss her, but didn't. And then he kind of walked off. He walked away. And she stood there for a minute. And whatever she picked up, I guess she was squeezing so hard it kind of dug into her hands, because I think it made her hand bleed. And she went on and went inside. So the next day, she's in her office, and Ruth comes into the office. And so she asked her about Mr. Dean. She was like, did he, you know, what happened between you and Mr. Dean? And she asked her, did he take advantage of you? And Sister Ruth was like, don't make fun of me. And she was like, I would never make fun of you. Like, that was a legitimate question. And so she was like, you don't want me here. You never did. None of you did. Is that why you took me off the lace and gave it to Blanche? And she was like, I already explained that. And so then Ruth starts going into, you know, you want him for yourself. That's why you're trying to get me out of the way. That's why you're trying to send me back with Father Roberts. And what did she say to her? She called him sniffing behind. Oh, she said, I see you sniffing behind him, meaning Mr. Dean, like a bitch in heat. And you should probably tread carefully, because Sister Philip is already gone. It's probably not going to look good if I leave as well. And Sister Clodagh is sitting there like, okay, well, I'm glad, you know, if you feel that way, that you should say it. And then Sister Ruth apologized. She was like, I don't know what comes over me sometimes. I don't know what I'm saying sometimes. I don't know what's wrong with me. And it did look like there was a change in her demeanor. Even Sister Clodagh was like, what was that? That little flash of anger. And she apologized. But it was just she just so taken aback by it. And so next thing you know, there's a knock on the door. Sister Adela arrived. She was with Father Roberts, and she says that Father Roberts' horse was lame and they need to go back to get him. And so Sister Clodagh agreed that she would go and get him. She sent Sister Ruth to get her horse together. And so by the time Sister Clodagh got outside, Sister Ruth was nowhere to be found. And so now Sister Clodagh is on foot, trekking through the woods, trying to find Sister Ruth and Father Roberts. And the storm is getting worse and worse and worse. It's like the visibility is getting worse and worse at this point. And so she's kind of like spinning in circles now. So I don't know if she's lost, got herself turned around or something, but at this point, she's out there and she's calling for Sister Ruth and Father Roberts. And that's pretty much how this episode ends. So, Sister Ruth is something else, or Srimati, or whatever is on her that's making her have these flashes. These personality changes is something else. So I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.